Welcome back to the South by East podcast. Man, John, you always be getting the best articles. And you know, we had talked just a little bit ago about an issue that happened with Pastor Tony Evans and having to step down due to an admitted moral failure and them taking these steps. And you had given the advice like, hey, we want to be slow to judge, right? We want to be slow to judge. Not everybody's sin is for everybody else to know. Now, recently, there's another article that has come out with this other pastor that's going on, and it seems like things are being handled a little bit different, man. But I wanted to get some clarity on that as well.
Yeah, just welcome to the intersection. And as we look at this, there's a couple different things going on. And so, first of all, this topic overall is not new to the church, and that's a sad thing to say.
It is.
And majorly, we haven't really commented on it. And one of those deals is like, I remember how earth-shattering it was for a lot of people when the things happened with Ravi Zacharias. But for me, like, I know he was big in the apologetics community, different things of that nature, but he wasn't somebody I just really like followed like that. Like I was knowledgeable of him and different things, and he said a good thing here or there, but he was not somebody. But I grew up in Dallas. I'm from South Oak Cliff.
Right.
And so when the article dropped about Dr. Tony Evans, it impacted me. One, he's the first African American graduate from the seminary I went to. He is somebody that I looked up into in ministry for so many years. One, his one of the reasons I read so much is I like to have illustrations and stuff. When I think about someone who's just really good at illustrations, I think of Dr. Tony Evans, and I think of late Pastor Tim Keller, and just their ability to make that bridge. And then just from being from Dallas and the impact that Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship has had in that Oak Cliff area where I'm from, all that made a difference. I remember when the Tony Evans Study Bible came out. I mean, I bought it in 2 different forms because it's another one of those deals. Like when I was in elementary school, my teachers told me that a black man would never be president. And then I lived to see a black man become president. And then I just thought a black man would never get a study Bible. And so when he came out with his, I was like, bro, I'm buying 2. I'm buying it in different. I got digital. I got. I had to have it.
Special.
So this hurt. But when he came out, and I had some friends ask me about, like, he simply said, hey, I had a moral failure years ago, old sin. I confessed it to the elders, and I'm stepping away. I'm going through a path of just reconciliation and restitution kind of deal. And I was like, I'm cool with that. I know I have some friends who some of their fathers are in some different places. I know some people who've been a part of leadership at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship, and so I was like, I think they're going to toe the line and hold it. And I had some friends though that said, no, he should tell specifically what he did. And I said, well, here's my push on that: is that as a pastor, a lot of times I have to deal with a lot of people's sin issues, and as a church, we have made it a policy that we want this to be a place of reconciliation and restoration. And so, man, we don't hold church meetings and put people's information out there. We don't tell their information from the stage. We guard people's stories, and we want this to be a place of healing and restitution and reconciliation and repentance and confession. And we don't want people to feel like, man, once they confess or once they have failed, they have to leave and find a new local body to be a part of because of the shame and guilt that comes with things sometimes.
Hey, can I speak into that just a little bit too? My thought on that is, would knowing what happened with Dr. Tony Evans help us? I've never been to his church, right? I enjoy some of the things that he's written. I've never been to his church. Me knowing specifically what sin he committed will not help bring any sort of restitution to his relationship with Christ, to those who follow him. Like, is it actually helpful? And I think sometimes the reason that we want to know all the details of everybody's sin is for the same reason that Adam and Eve ate the fruit in the garden. We want to decide what's right and wrong for ourselves. We want to be judge and jury. Even when we see there's already accountability being had and there's already things being said, we want to say, well, I want to see if this is being handled to my level of to my level of understanding, to my level of accountability, and that's not our place. There are times when
Yeah.
we don't need to know, and it doesn't help us or the other person for us to know what's happening.
And it's not healthy. And so it's like it's not healthy for everyone to know. And I said the general
No,
person doesn't need
it's
to know.
not.
I said like the elders need to know, the church leadership needs to know, they need to take action. And then I was talking to my wife about it, and she said, "Hey, my wife is a mental health therapist, and she once worked in with an organization specifically that dealt with sexual offenders and those who have been sexually abused. I mean, she was one of the people who came to the hospital when a young lady showed up and was sexually abused, and helped them walk through the process as they got tested and different things of that nature. And one of the things they were trained on is not to share whether they themselves had suffered from sexual abuse in the past, because it was seen as not being helpful and healthy for the victim of that horrendous crime for several different reasons.
Yeah.
And so, and I was like, man, yeah, I just don't think it's healthy in all situations to tell all the details. And I'm like, somebody needs to know the details, right? But not everyone.
Right.
And so
Not
that's kind of,
everyone.
and with me not knowing what was actually done or committed, I wanted to be slow to speak about how everybody was terrible and they like fire and brimstone. I wanted to be slow on that, right? But then, man, and it's sad because it seemed like it follows this pattern. Whether the next day or a couple of days later, an article came out, or first a letter that was communicated from the Gateway Church to his body from his elders, and this is one of the reasons why we don't send out messages in around different things like this in email. We don't, is because somebody that's a part of that church who got that communication then put it on the internet, right? And so not everybody in the body is mature enough to handle all things.
Yeah.
And so they put it on the internet, and it came out, and it just said, "Oh, Pastor Robert Morris committed sin years ago with a young lady." No more details, kind of deal. And I was like,
And that's the email that was leaked.
that was the email that
That was
was
the email that
leaked
was
saying
leaked.
that he's going through a
Yeah.
process, whatever. And once again, I'm like, I don't know enough details to make a decision. And then it just dropped that actually, I believe he was in his 20s, and he had inappropriate connection. I'm gonna be careful about my language. With a 12-year-old young girl. And I had to go back to my friends that I had talked to before, because before they said, well, I think you just have this attitude or opinion because you're passionate. I'm like, no, I said because I want to walk with people and see them healed, and I can't be in a position where I'm telling everybody's story to everybody. Like that's
Right.
not a healing,
No.
and that's not a healing environment. But then I said, and I went back to him and I said, hey, a story like this is what makes what I said last week seem so bad, and I want to differentiate. I said, in this case, a crime was committed. And when a crime is committed, it changes the situation totally. When a crime is committed, now everything has to come out and everything has to be told, and it has to be reported to the police. And that's so important. When a crime has been committed, no, we don't handle it in-house. We report crimes to the justice system. Now, there's going to have to be a reconciliation and restitution of relationships within the body. That's a part of it, but that's not all of it. It has to go to the legal system, and there has to be a reporting of the crimes. And even here's the deal, man. It's just a part of this, right? And so there's a difference in that. And I think I have seen where people have covered up some things. Let me go back. I have seen where people have made some decisions. I won't say cover up. They made some decisions on how they were going to handle some things, and enacted discipline, trying to be loving when they should have took a step further. And younger ministry, man, and I questioned some things, and boy, I got torched for questioning some of the decisions. That I was like, hey, I just think there needs to be more here or whatever else. And in some cases, I'm not going to go into details. In some cases, I had to draw a really hard line, and I end up leaving places.
Yeah.
Because I chose to do. I said it needed to be handled differently than what it was handled.
Right. And I think, man, I would even push back a little bit on like, well, when the law is broken, like, I don't want, and I don't think you're saying this, but I don't want people to walk away with this thought of like, okay, when there's a law broken, then all bets are off, and then you can just tell everybody everything, and that's not the case, right? And I don't think that's what you're saying
No.
either. The appropriate amount of accountability needs to be held in all situations. If there's a situation that's happening and it's not a breaking of the law, because sometimes there are domestic violence disputes that aren't a breaking of the law. There are issues where there are domestic disputes where ain't nobody going to jail. Ain't nobody going to jail.
Well,
ain't nobody,
a domestic dispute and domestic violence
domestic violence.
are
That's why I clarify. Like there are issues like there are domestic disputes, and in a domestic dispute, there can be all sorts of things happening, and there can be space where maybe that person is a leader of a team, and they're leading in this space. It's like, hey, we need to have this person step down. There may be people that need to know because of different pieces and different reasons. The appropriate amount of accountability should be held. When we're breaking a law, the law should be notified because the appropriate amount of accountability should be held. But we don't just sacrifice people's rights because the law has been broken, and because that enables that type of behavior to continue.
Let me go here. So let me use it in another way. Divorce. Okay. There's a lot of debate all the time about divorce and different things of that nature, and
like whether Christians should be allowed to be divorced or not.
And it's like, hey, why was divorce permitted? Divorce was permitted to protect those without the power in that community, right? Yep. And so we have to look at it from that standpoint that God has always been about protecting those who were vulnerable. And so in this case, sometimes in your rush for vigilante justice,
right?
You can actually do more harm to the vulnerable because you're sharing you're sharing information publicly that should go to the police first and allow that may hinder the investigation. That actually allows them to get restitution in a situation, and that can be harmful. Or you can share some things that cause deeper emotional damage. And so one of the things is being wise enough to stop and to ask questions, to walk slowly, to speak carefully, and make sure that especially you don't share anything that that the victimized wouldn't want you to share.
Right.
And I know as a leader, I've been in a situation before. You know, I've been here, and I've been questioned because a situation has happened, a moral failure has happened with someone, and other people have found out about the moral failure, and we knew and we took action. But the person affected said, no. I don't want everybody brought in this because it's going to cause me deeper damage.
Yep.
And so we've had to respond in that. There was no laws broken, but we've had to respond in that in a way of loving way of walking with that person and saying, we're going to honor your wishes on this. We're going to walk forward. We still have actions we have to take as church leadership, and we're going to take those. But that doesn't mean that means we don't to take those. We don't have to send out this broadcast email to. We don't have to post it on social media, and we don't have to say it from the stage.
Nope.
And we can still hold biblical accountability in all these situations and take that. And so those are some of the things that I look at in the situation. There is no perfect science and always do this. It's not the chart of duct tape versus WD-40. That is not what this is, and we can't treat these situations like that. And I think that's what gets us in trouble. But you also have to know when to out-counsel things. And saying like, hey, this is beyond my depth, and I need some outside counsel on this to make sure we're doing this right and to do this well. I think what gets us in trouble even more is thinking that we have all the knowledge to always handle every situation correctly, and we don't need any outside help. That is an act of pride, and that will always land us in a bad situation because pride comes before
the fall.
Hey, this has been another episode of the South by East podcast. Thank you for joining us in the intersection. Hey, let us hear your thoughts. and I know it's hard to trust leaders and institutions right now. How do you decide when to speak and when to
Be discreet.
discreet? See you on the next episode.